Today, we're diving into the incredible story of Canada's biggest banks and their decade of massive growth. We're going to unpack the numbers and see just how these financial giants came to dominate the Canadian economy. And it all starts with one single powerful figure. 159%. Just let that number sink in for a second. It's a huge, huge figure, and it represents some absolutely enormous growth. But growth of what?
We're talking about a 10-year span where a huge piece of the Canadian economy just exploded in value. So, what are we talking about? Let's find out.
That's right. The combined market value, the market cap, of Canada's big six banks skyrocketed by 159%. This is a story about financial power and how it grew at a truly extraordinary rate. So let's start with that big picture. We're going to break down the collective performance of these financial heavyweights, looking at the first quarter of 2016 all the way to the first quarter of 2026. Okay, this one table tells such a powerful story. Just look at that market cap line. It jumps from $373 billion to almost $1 trillion. That's our 159% increase right there, really fueled by a decade of solid activity both at home and abroad.
And it's not just their value on the stock market. We're talking about their actual profitability, right? Their net income more than doubled. It shot up 116% from $8.8 billion to $19 billion in a single quarter. Wild.
And of course, to make that kind of profit, you need revenue. The total cash flowing into these banks jumped by 93%. This just goes to show you how much their actual business operations scaled up across the board in only 10 years.
So we've been throwing around some pretty big terms here. Market cap, net income. Before we go any further, let's do a super quick refresher on what these key numbers actually mean.
First up, market cap. This is pretty simple. It's what the stock market thinks a company is worth. It's the total price tag for the whole shebang. So when we say it grew 59%, we mean investors' valuation of these banks just went through the roof.
Next is revenue. Think of this as all the money coming in the front door. It's from all their business, loans, fees, you name it, before a single bill gets paid. It's that big top-line number.
And finally, net income. Okay, so if revenue is what comes in the front door, net income is the money that's left over after all the expenses, taxes, and costs are paid. It's the bottom line profit, and it's a really pure measure of a company's financial health. All right, so we've seen their collective power, but who exactly are these institutions? Let's do a quick roll call of the 6 players that absolutely dominate Canada's financial world.
And here they are: RBC, TD, Scotiabank, BMO, CIBC, and the National Bank of Canada. You know these names. If you're in Canada, they're practically everywhere. They really are the bedrock of the country's entire financial system.
Now, here's where the story gets really fun. Because, yeah, all 6 banks grew together, but when you look at them one by one, some of them were just playing in a completely different league.
So in this 10-year financial race, which bank didn't just win, but absolutely blew away the competition when it came to growing its profits? The answer might not be who you think.
Wow, just look at these results. The National Bank of Canada absolutely crushed it, growing its net income by an incredible 381%. That's just a colossal performance. CIBC wasn't far behind with a 216% gain. It just goes to show you, while the giants like RBC and TD had impressive growth, they were actually outpaced by some of their smaller competitors.
But, for investors, growth isn't everything. They also want to get paid, right? And that's where dividends come in. That's cash paid right out to shareholders. And here we see a totally different story. In 2026, Scotiabank was offering the highest yield of this group, really rewarding its investors, even though its profit growth was the slowest of the bunch.
Okay, we've seen these massive numbers. We've ranked the winners. But so what? Why does any of this actually matter to the average person? Let's connect the dots from these corporate boardrooms to the real world.
Well, for starters, the health of the Big Six is, in so many ways, the health of Canada's whole economy. They're that intertwined. For investors, their steady growth makes them the foundation of countless retirement plans. For you, the consumer, this concentration of power has a direct impact on things like your mortgage rates and your bank fees. And on the world stage, the pure size of these banks gives Canada a really powerful voice in global finance. And this all leads us to one final, really big question.
When just a handful of institutions get this huge and this woven into the fabric of an entire country's economy, have they reached a point where they are just too big to fail? It's the central issue that kind of hangs over this entire decade of dominance, and we'll leave that with you to think about.